In this video, we're going to cover the concept of speed as a special application of rates. And we talked about rates before. And a rate is the comparison of two things compared to each other in different units of measure. Okay, it's different to a ratio. We've sort of spoken about that before. Speed is a very special type of rate though. It's a rate where we compare distance, a distance covered, with the time taken to cover that distance. So, for example, if a car, for example, a car's traveling, traveled 100 kilometers, and it took that car 2 hours to cover 100 kilometers. At what rate is the car covering distance? The car is covering distance at 50 kilometers per hour. Okay, so we'll look at an example shortly. Speed is usually measured in kilometers per hour or in meters per second. Kilometers per hour tends to be the more common rate of distance compared to time that's used in everyday life. So, for example, the speed of cars, speed of, for example, aircraft. Just generally speaking, this is what I think more people understand, especially in everyday life. Meters per second is not as common. Tends to be used more in scientific areas. In scientific fields, tends to be used sometimes to measure objects that are traveling really, really fast, for example, or traveling just very short distances where it doesn't make sense to talk about distances in kilometers. You might be talking very, very short distances, like say covering 10 meters or 20 meters. Meters per second is quite useful there. Okay. Let's have a look at some formulas, and of course, what's maths without some formulas? Okay, so speed, how do we work out the speed of an object? The average speed, okay, is distance over time. Okay, and we'll look at an example shortly. So, for example, with the car example, the car covered 100 kilometers and it took 2 hours. It'll be 100 over 2. Okay, distance is equal to speed times time. So the speed of the object multiplied by the time taken, okay, will give you the distance. Finally, if we want to work out how long or how much time has been taken for that object to travel, you'd need the speed. You'd need the distance of that the object's covered, like say a car. So, for example, the total distance of the car divided by the speed at which it was traveling at. So, for example, let's say the car covered 1,000 kilometers. Okay. And the speed it was traveling at was 100 kilometers per hour. How much time would be taken? 1,000 divided by 100 is 10. It would have taken that car 10 hours to cover that journey, or to go from from start to finish and to cover 1,000 kilometers. Okay. Now, one other thing I'd like to mention is this triangle. Okay, so it's people call it all different things. It could be called a speed, distance, time triangle, or a DST triangle. This helps you to remember these formulas. So if you want to, for example, find the distance, okay, so distance is equal to speed times time. Let's say you wanted to find the time taken for the car to cover a certain amount of distance, for example, or to cover that distance. If you put your finger on, say, the time. Okay, so cover the letter that you're trying to find. So if you're trying to find time t, okay, if you cover the t is equal to d over s. Okay, so that's what that line's for in the triangle, d over s. If you want to find the speed of the object, okay, or let's say the speed of the car, you cover the s, okay, and you'll have d over t. Okay, so again, cover the s. Whichever letter you cover is the subject of the formula. So if you want to find the s, cover the s, it'll be d over t. Okay, and an easy way to remember where the letters go in the triangle is just do it in alphabetical order. So d, s, t in that order. Make sure you put a little multiplication symbol there, and that's a way we could remember that. Okay. In the next video, we're going to have a look at some examples of this. Okay, so just make sure you watch the next video after this one.